Hello everyone, in this video we're going to be taking a look at an article from Fox 5 New York that comes from the Bristol Express. It was published, or at least posted, on October 3rd on the Fox 5 New York website. It's written by Bob Montgomery, and it also comes from the Associated Press. Struggling family-owned farms continue to disappear. Now, I know my videos tend to focus on more politics news-wise, but this still has a political aspect to it, besides the fact that this is something that does need attention brought to it, because we have become a nation, a society, that is too dependent on these large corporate farms that literally have control over whether you, I, or anyone else can eat or whether we starve. And it shouldn't be a situation of that. And they can control pricing, and they can do all these things that make it so that something like eating, a necessity to survive, becomes an ever increasing an expense proposition. It's actually kind of sad. So let's get into the article here. Small family farms have been slowly disappearing for decades, and this will likely be the case of Miners Farm in Bristol, founded in 1864. Now let that sink in. It's 2017. Okay, this is a 153-year-old farm. This is a farm that has gone from generation to generation for over a century and a half. I mean, that's a major feat. So we're talking about something that's, if it disappears, okay, there's a piece of history that'll be lost, but also the fact of these farms should be supplying their local communities with food. And that's not going to happen if these places disappear. So founded in 1864, the 30-acre parcel on Chippen's Hill is operated by Paul C. Miner, his wife Vicky, and father Paul J. Miner. Mark Miner, the brother of Paul C., separately harvests the hay. So now, this farm, you know, looks like they grow hay, and that's one of their bigger things right now. I mean, just because of the situation. It's kind of the end of an era, said Paul Miner. I don't know if this would necessarily be our last year, but if not, I don't see it happening much longer. With 48 years with fall stuff, I just know I won't be physically able to continue to do this, and it's not easy to run a farm or stay in business in Connecticut. Now, I wonder why that could be. I mean, the farm, you know, running a farm, you know, running any business is hard work. But if you're doing, like, the actual farming type of thing of a farm, or if you're running the day-to-day operations, it's like running a business. But if you're doing the back-breaking stuff, too, it's hard. And he's been doing this for 48 years. And one reason why it's so hard to do this in Connecticut is because Connecticut is a Democrat-run state. It's a Democrat-run shithole. Okay? They don't subscribe to the New England philosophy, but yet somehow they're considered part of New England. And, I mean, if you traditionally look, what has been considered New England, at least historically, not just by, oh yeah, tossed into the grouping, okay? Like, the actual heart and soul of New England, okay, are Massachusetts, Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire. This is like Connecticut and Rhode Island are kind of like little New York. You know, whether it's little New York City on the note of Providence, because, I mean, major mobster shit going on in their government and everything else over the decades. Connecticut is like, you know, bedroom commuter New York State. It doesn't really subscribe to the philosophies and ideals of New England. So, I mean, the way that they treat business is more like New York State than, say, New England. Well, Massachusetts is kind of bad, but they're not like Connecticut, New York State bad, to an extent. But yeah, so they make it hard for these small businesses to operate in general because they want these big businesses to be, who line their pockets, to be the ones operating in their state. And Democrats are also the party that tends to be in bed with these large corporate farms. So they don't want to see, small business, whether it's a farm or anything else. They don't want to really see it succeed. They want people, the masses, dependent on them or dependent on their crony capitalists putting money in their pocket friends. A miner who graduated from Virginia Tech in 1970 added that the younger generation of the miner family went to college and have moved out of state as have many others. Those are different ages because the cost of living is much lower and the job market is more plentiful. Well, yeah, I mean, Connecticut is expensive to live. It really is. And it's a shithole. That's what's messed up. I mean, unless you're talking going out towards, like, where Mohegan Sun and Foxwoods are, that's rural. That's kind of nice, okay? But Connecticut in general, if you're talking like Hartford and such, rundown shitholes. It's Democrats in action. It's one of those. All right, the cities there are like poster children for Democrats in action. It's a fucking shithole. And then they've raised the taxes and they made it so expensive that it's hard to live there. All of our kids, mine, my brother Mark's, have jobs in areas that are booming, said Miner. My son is in North Carolina and my daughter is in Virginia. Mark has 2 girls, one in Virginia and one in Texas. So he's looking around and he's seeing the death of his farm. And if you have a farm, odds are you're going to be in a rural area. And the way they're talking, and he's talking, you have all these kids leaving the community in general for these other areas. So, I mean, this is a death on a larger scale than just the farms, too. Miner, who retired from Southern New England Telephone at age 52 as the Director of External Affairs, also adds that when he compares what he has to pay for taxes on his house against what others do with much larger homes in other areas, such relocations make sense. This guy's getting old. There's no one to continue the legacy because his kids have moved on. And this is not the case with all these family farms. There are family farms where the kids want to continue the tradition, but they're not going to be able to because of the environment that has been created with these large corporate farms and crony capitalism and the Democrats being in bed with them. And I'm not saying that there aren't Republicans that aren't in bed with these corporate farms, but the Democrats tend to be in bed with those types of things more so than the Republicans. Republicans is more, military industrial complex type stuff. On the note of being in bed. But yeah, so these are contributing factors to the death of the farms, You get these kids that don't want to continue it. You get the fact that even if they do, the deck is stacked against, the deck, why am I saying deck? That's not even a word. The deck is stacked against them. So it's creating an environment where these family farms are shrinking and shrinking and shrinking in numbers. And we're becoming more and more dependent on large corporate farms. And that's a scary proposition. Once a full-fledged farm in earlier decades, Marner's farm is basically downsized to its store being open, holding fall activities for children, and scheduling his visits with his pig, Daisy, to libraries across the country to promote reading. And I'm betting it's probably within the last few decades that it's no longer a full-fledged farm. Because, one reason why I did this is because, within reason of me, like reasonable distance, there are a couple of these family farms. And there's one in particular that I know very well. Growing up, I went there with like my grandparents and even my parents to purchase local produce that they grew. And I've always loved this place. So I go out of my way to go there to buy produce. And over the last few years, they've had to resort, I wouldn't say had to, choice, but they've started to resort to purchasing like some of their produce from either farmers, local farmers markets or local growers, and becoming more of a market themselves, and it's heartbreaking. And I mean, I understand, change in the generation, and stuff like that. Say family moving on, family getting smaller, a lot of different factors. So I mean, I understand that, and that's this kind of hit home with me. So that's one reason why I'm using this as a means to get this kind of out there. We only grow hay and our pumpkins and things are purchased outside, said Marner. We have had different mission statements through the years, and this is making family fun and memory. If you've had different ones, why is it making family fun and memories is what we do best? If you've had different ones, that sounds like that's only one. God, this author. This journalist. A term I'm using, excuse me, loosely here. That's giving the children of today who visit a chance to see what their older generations of family members had experienced on either a daily or routine basis in growing up and as adults. Maybe get some of them interested in continuing on that type of stuff. I mean, that would be a good thing. I mean, I hope that it does with some of them. The visiting kids ride the miner's train and purchase pumpkins and candy and other items in the farm store. These children appear at the farm on field trips with family members to also witness the old barns, the large open fields, and overall ambience of an old New England past. Traveling the country to visit libraries with Daisy and promoting reading is something Paul Miner, 69, can continue for years to come. So, he's been working that farm since he was 21 years old. 48 years. I mean, the guy's getting old. I can see where he's seeing his legacy ending and the kids not continuing it. And I would hope that someone would actually want to buy the farm and keep it as intended, as a farm, when the day that him and his family decide to sell it. I would hope. And what's really scary is they're running this farm with their father. How old is he? He's got to be like in his 80s or so, if not more. Which goes to show that these are hardworking, salt-of-the-earth people. I mean, still doing this stuff. And they're that old. I can still do my pig out on reading programs. Oh, that's a cute name for what he does with his pig Daisy, said Miner. I can still carry on in my old age. Our new mission is to encourage children to develop a love for reading. And this traveling has helped put Bristol on the map. Mom, the late Jane Miner, was on a cruise and was at the dinner table when someone asked her where she was from, said Miner. She told them she was from Bristol and then was asked, do you know a guy who has a pig and goes to libraries? I'm sure that made her evening that her son is famous like that. During 3 months in the winter, the Miners, along with Daisy and her 2 pugs, Lily Pug and Dixie Cup, reside in Florida, where Paul Miner visits nursing homes and convalescent homes to bring the good old days memories to the elderly. Those who most likely lived on or visited farms growing up. In 1900, for example, 42% of the population lived on farms, with only about 2% doing so today. Let that number sink in, because you had 42%, okay, pushing upwards of half of Americans living on farms in 1900. Think about that for a second. Now there's 2%. That 42% of the population supplied pretty much all the food for themselves, and the other 58%. Now we're down to this 2% situation, which means that we have large corporate farms supplying almost the whole country with food, and in small numbers we have what's remaining for family farms supplying, you know, produce and meat and, you know, food to the rest of the population. That's a scary, 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 scary thing. That's a scary proposition, because food, growing it, having control over it, that's power. Okay, that's ultimate power, because you decide who starves to death and who doesn't. I mean, that's why, like, the head of Nestle, okay, on the note of water, doesn't believe access to water is a fundamental right, and wants to be able to take water, privatize it, and charge a fortune for it. He's basically admitted this is no different with the farm situation. It's the same type of thing. So, if you had more people living on farms, more people doing actual farming, you would have more small business. You would have cheaper food prices, because these corporate farms don't have any competition, and they're able to charge whatever the hell they want. The mission statements for this is revising childhood memories, said Miner. Their roots go back to agriculture. They might have gone to their grandfather's farm for vacation, not the beach, as families do today. And that's true. I mean, a lot of people went to relatives' farms for the summer, like kids growing up. And they got put to work, and they learned about it. And some of them, you know, continued on the family tradition, even though they weren't farmers, you know, themselves living on the farm. They spent summers there. And the thing is with what he's doing, hopefully he's encouraging more people, you know, these future generations, to want to look at farming. See, the situation is what we need to do, and the crony capitalist Democrats aren't going to do something like this. But if communities want to improve themselves as a whole, all right, they give tax incentives for large businesses to move into a community. It's kind of standard practice. It's common. Why not give the small farmer an incentive to farm, to grow food? I mean, the land, all right, because land is so valuable, and they charge so much on property taxes. Give them a break on the property taxes, because they're as long as they're growing food and they're supplying it locally, give them a break. Have them bring food that you know where it came from, you know, into your community, and break the cycle of this dependence on these large corporate farms. I mean, I'm a libertarian, and I understand, like a constitutionalist libertarian, like the Founding Fathers. I understand you want to incentivize certain things. You can do that. The Founding Fathers believed in that. They didn't believe in this anarchy, you know, crap that libertarians, you know, this globalist bullshit. No, they understood that you got a nature You got to foster and nurture certain things to better the country. And this is a situation like that. It's a sad one. This is a sad thing. But for now, it's the fall season once again, when the miners will share the farm experience with visitors. And what is an option if and when the farm has to permanently close one day? My brother and I agree that if someone is looking to develop property, we have 30 acres, said miner. 5 years ago, I wouldn't talk about it. I have to face reality. Well, I hope that he would also look at the fact if someone wanted to live on the 30 acres and actually farm it and put it back into full production, okay, I would hope that he would look at a situation with those people wanting to do that as well and want to sell it, because it would continue the legacy of the farm itself. And it would also help to improve the situation of supplying food to your community. I mean, we need more of it. We need more of these local farmers doing that. It's just messed up that in my lifetime, I mean, around me there were a bunch of farms where they had stands, they grew their own stuff, and you could go and you could buy it. And certain ones grew certain things better because of, say, like the makeup of the soil. So, you know, one of them grew better onions than the other. So you'd buy your onions at one, you'd buy your corn at another, and so forth. So now there's not really any of this going on, and it's just to see this in my lifetime, and I'm barely in my 40s, change so much. It's a scary proposition. And it's not a scary proposition on the note of I fear change. It's a scary proposition on the impact of the change. Anyway, I think I've covered this well enough here. I'm just going to leave things where they are. If you liked this video, depending on where you are watching it, please give it an upvote or thumbs up. If you want to know when new content of mine hits the internet, don't forget to subscribe to one or more of my social media or video accounts listed here. Also, with YouTube, don't forget to ring that bell. You can find all of my video content on both BitChute and YouTube. This may not be the case with other places I upload to, but I will try to minimize this happening. You are always welcome to interact with me at any of these sites on the list, so feel free to do so. If you have anything you want me to cover in a video when it comes to news or current events, send it right along to me. I will try to do my best to cover it. As always, thank you for watching.